Després de veure la reacció d'un i altre sector, anem a la zona on ha guanyat el no amb més contundència. Ens referim al sud d'Escòcia, la zona coneguda com a Scottish Borders, frontera escocesa, on un 66,6% del cens ha votat no a la independència. Quina és la teva impressió dels resultats? Creus que a partir d'ara hi haurà canvis?
Well, I think the first thing is to say that I'm very much relieved by the no vote, because I think that we would have gone into even more turmoil if it had been a vote for independence, because there were so many uncertainties as to what would happen in the longer term. There was going to be so much change. What we now seem to have is that there is a vote for change, but within the existing borders. That Scotland will gain more powers. I think those powers will largely be financial. We need to be able to raise our own. I'm a Liberal Democrat, and we have always believed in what was described as home rule for Scotland under a federal arrangement. But that implies that there would be a level of home rule for Wales, home rule for Northern Ireland. And effectively, I suppose that means assemblies within parts of England, which would reflect what the priorities of the areas of England are as well.
Ets optimista respecte a les promeses que ha fet Westminster? Creus que les compliran, encara que no hagin especificat en què consisteixen?
Oh, I think they have to. A vote of 55% to 45% shows a significant support for a level of independence and home rule. Right? If that was not carried through, if those extra powers were not developed and devolved, so it would be the proverbial own goal, if in football terms, if those powers were not given. There would be no conceivable defence against independence the next time.
Què en penses del tema monetari? Quina part de la qüestió ha de preocupar la gent i quina forma part de la tàctica de la por?
I don't think it was scare tactics. I think each side puts a positive interpretation on it in their terms. Quite clearly, in my view, the currency union is the sensible option. Yes. But for the independence movement to say that they wanted the currency option means that they would then be subordinate to the needs of the Bank of England. And since the Bank of England and the English lobby would be greater than the Scottish lobby, I think, where is the independence coming in? They would not have been able to take on full control of the financial system, because they would still be under the theories and the practicalities required by the Bank of England. I think in their terms, they would have needed to go to an entirely new currency. Our knitwear industry, our textile industry here, went through bad times round about 10, 20 years ago. They are now recovering. They have an industry which produces quality products, and they want to continue that recovery. They don't want it being undermined by uncertainty. And we need the employment in this town, and that employment is focused on the knitwear industry.
Et va sorprendre o vas trobar normal que el referèndum fos permès pel govern d'Anglaterra?
I think I was probably a little surprised to begin with. Do I think referenda should be held? Yes, I do.
Si el govern s'hagués negat a permetre el referèndum i a negociar, quin hagués estat l'efecte social? Creus que hagués tingut un impacte més negatiu que simplement deixar la gent votar?
No, I don't. I don't. It's often said that Scottish people don't get excited about anything.
I agree.
Yeah, we tend to be a bit more calm and almost inert, unless it becomes like of an international football match or an international rugby match and the like. But no, we don't normally get excited. I suspect that if the demand for a referendum had not been granted, then we would have had perhaps more intense discussion in the Scottish Government in Edinburgh, in the Parliament, and it may have led to even more Scottish nationalist members of the Scottish Parliament being elected, perhaps out of a frustration. But no, I really don't see it as having led to anything revolutionary. Right. I wonder if there is, in looking back, a feeling that David Cameron, or at least the government in Westminster, had opened Pandora's box. And by allowing the referendum, they had suddenly released a load of possibilities that they perhaps could not then control. But the Scottish situation may be controllable because you can give these extra powers that we talk about. But what is going to be the impact on Wales? What's going to be the impact on Northern Ireland? And very particularly, what is going to be the impact on the House of Commons and the government in Westminster? What process has suddenly been begun which will change things in the English regions forever?
Aquesta àrea qui acostuma a votar? Conservadora. Per tant, estàs contenta dels resultats del referèndum?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 67% of the voters voted no. I think that there's going to be an interesting discussion now about what the result actually meant.
Right.
Because there's a real question about what was the understanding of what people were voting for. I mean, it was a long process, a very long process, but it seemed to me and to many people I spoke to that people struggled with actually what they really were voting for.
What do you mean?
Què vols dir?
Well, what was on offer was an awful lot of maybes, ifs, promises, and people got increasingly confused by the two sides and what they were saying and what they were suggesting and what they were purporting to be fact and what they were purporting not to be fact. And I do think the government was surprised, the Yes camp were very surprised that they didn't win it. And they're now talking about, oh, well, they didn't win it because everybody was frightened. That's not my impression. People weren't frightened. People were very clear about what they were voting for and why they were voting. But what they were very confused about in many cases is actually what was the supposed benefit. And the supposed benefit was a yes to everything. And you can't say yes to everything. And that put a lot of people off. You know, you can't say sort of, yes, you can have a completely green country, but yes, the country's going to run on the benefits of fossil fuel. They're contradictory. Right. So, you know, I think if you're arguing about the future of a country, you need to be much more sort of grounded in what you're arguing for. And I don't think there was grounded argument. I think it was incredibly confusing for people. So actually it became very emotive, and it was driven on the idea that if you didn't have everything you wanted, vote yes and you'd get everything you want. Now, there's now a lot of dissatisfied people who feel they've been cheated out of everything they were going to get. We have to find a way now of satisfying people's desires. But you can't please all the people all the time.
No.
You know, they wanted a democratic vote on whether Scotland should be independent. That democratic vote took place, and they democratically voted no.
Right.
If you have a democratic vote and you lose, do you then cede to the people who actually won?
Yeah.
Or do you say, sorry, I don't accept that democratic vote? In which case, are you really saying actually that democracy doesn't work unless it gives you what you want?
True.
So that's a huge question. I think it would be more realistic. The question on the paper was, should Scotland be an independent country? The answer was no. Now, that doesn't mean that everything is fine the way it is and we don't need to change anything. That when you look at Scotland's future as a document, it is hollow, it's empty, you know, it has no concrete future for Scotland. It's a wish list of wishy-washy claims.
Right.
You know, I was really gobsmacked, to be honest, when I looked at it. I thought, is this really all they've managed to come up with after 40 odd years of thinking about it? That they hadn't thought through how they would satisfy the contradictory desires of many of the parties that they took on board, whether it was the Socialists or the Greens or whatever. They hadn't really thought through that. They were just saying, hey, get on board, you can all have what you want so long as you vote yes. It's a dangerous game to play with the country, very dangerous game. And business people who create the wealth in Scotland needed something a little bit more tangible. They weren't going to gamble their business futures with it, their employees' futures, their families' futures. You know, I mean, if they had given me something really concrete, I might have considered it. I certainly looked at everything that had to be said. But it was far too hollow to throw away 300 years of solid forward motion. Crazy.